And God rarely shows us, miles and miles down the road, but he does show us the next steps to take.
Well, hey, everyone. Welcome to Framework Leadership, a podcast about principles and ideas you can use today to take your leadership to the next level. I'm your host, Ken Ingle, president of Southeastern University.
And I'm your co-host, Michael Steiner, vice president for innovation.
Today, we are excited to welcome on our show Dr. Bob Griffith, the lead pastor of Christ Chapel, a multi-generational, multicultural church in the D.C. area. And Bob is also the founder of One Hope Together, a nonprofit organization that seeks to rally people around the cause of an important need in our nation today, and that's foster care. Welcome. Glad to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me here. This is great. I am an avid follower. I've listened to many, many amazing podcasts, and it is an honor and privilege to be on the podcast with you guys.
Well, hey, as we open up the conversation, I want to discuss your latest book, which you wrote with your wife, Wendy. It's called Fostering Jesus, Answering the Call to Foster Care in the Home and in the Church. Tell us about this mission to foster. What motivated you to write this book and share the mission with us?
Sure. A few years ago, I was an executive pastor at a larger church in the Chicagoland area, and I was looking to try to make an impact as best I could in the community and be a church where if we were to be missing one day, that they would actually miss us. And so I was just asking the questions of how could we be relevant? What could we do to impact our community? It's a question that pastors ask themselves often, of course. So I started with just a simple meeting with county leaders, representatives around a round table. And I just asked them that question: what if you could wave a magic wand and you could call the church to do something for you, just one thing, what would it be? And they kind of looked at each other, and all the heads turned to the head of the foster care programming in the county. And so that person looked at me and said, well, I guess it would be me. And so they just went on to talk about how foster care was their number one area of need. And if churches throughout the city and the county could help with that, it would have the greatest impact on their community. And what I found out later, after fostering a child myself, and then two, and then three, is that it is a great need in the community. And 50% of the kids in foster care are 5 or under, which I did not know. And so we had 3 children that were under 5. And so we developed a heart for the children in our community by doing that. And we really were inspired by a few that had done foster care in our community. And we were able to watch them be successful and really just kind of normalize it for us and give us confidence that if they could do it, we could do it. So we just began fostering these children in our home. That led to an opportunity to adopt them, which I can tell you about later. But that's kind of how we began and got involved. And it was just about meeting the need in the community. And I really just found out later that once we got involved with that, it opened up doors in the community, just like I wasn't able to do really in any other way. Foster care just began to be kind of a key that unlocked just so many different doors in the community because it touches so many areas of life. You have, food insecurity and education and the justice system and on and on. And so when you make an impact in foster care, they all talk to each other. They communicate and share the stories and the impact and ask, how are you able to make a difference? And when the church is the answer that they share, it really spreads. I had the county executive at an event one time, and this was probably 3 or 4 years after we began just doing foster care ourselves as a husband and wife, and then began to do it in our church. And I just went up to him, and I had never met him before. so I shook his hand. I said, hi, I've always wanted to just introduce myself, say hello. And he looked at me and he said, well, I know who you are. And I said, well, how do you know that? He said, well, we know what you've been doing. And he said, I just want to say to you, he said, people try to advocate in different ways. And he said, and I so appreciate the way that you advocate for children in our community by just simply serving. And he said that just makes a huge difference. And so I just heard things like that from leaders in the community that really spurred me on to just continue doing it. So that's kind of how it began.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit more about when you're working with a church or you're working with a family that are talking about foster care, how do you get them to start? What are the challenges that they have? How do we talk through them? If somebody's curious about it, where do we begin? Great question.
So number one, if you ask people who are interested, you'll find out that the studies that they have done are true. I think that they're just accurate. That 38% of people in America are interested in fostering, but only 1% of the Christian population in a congregation in America actually do something to help foster children. So there's this huge gap between who's actually involved and who is interested in helping. So people are interested. Pastors need to know that, because as they talk to their congregation, I mean, almost half of the congregation is interested statistically. So that plays true for our relationships and family and friends, like you said. And so when you end up talking to someone about foster care, oftentimes you'll see the eyes light up and people will say, oh, wow, I've thought of that before. That's really interesting. Can you tell me more about it? They want to hear your story. But when you ask about the challenge, what I've found is that the number one challenge that people share is they just have a hard time contemplating the idea of fostering a child, building a relationship with them, and then one day the child goes back to their biological parents and they have to say goodbye. The potential pain in that just seems too great. And that's just the number one reason. I've had people say to me, God bless you for doing this. I could never do that. I could never. And I say, well, why? Why could you not do that? And that's the reason that they give, is I could just never let go and send them back. And to that, I would say, you can, because your heart is big enough to be able to love another person and help them through, a vulnerable season in their life and set them back on a course for health with their family. You can do it. Your heart's big enough, and it won't break it. There's enough space in there to give a piece of your heart to a child, and it's worthwhile. God did it for you. You can do it for someone else.
That's good. One of the concepts that was discussed in your book around this topic was dealing with a lack of control. Oftentimes we need to let go and just, let God work through it and learn how to walk in obedience. But what does that look like? How can we walk in obedience?
Well, it's listening to the Holy Spirit and the promptings that come from God. The enemy is never going to prompt us to help a child that's in need. I mean, that just isn't going to come from the enemy. That's going to come from the Spirit of God. So, when the Spirit prompts you in that direction, obedience is taking one step forward. So for me, I'll just give you an example. When I met with those county representatives and they told me that foster care was their number one need, I went home and I talked to my wife, Wendy, and I said, I think we could do something as a family and something as a church. I didn't know fully what all of that looked like, but what it started with was taking an application and just exploring what that would look like, what's involved, what are the steps, what are the requirements. And at any point along the way, you can change direction, but it's taking the first step in following that prompting that God gives you. And for us, the one step led to the next step, which ultimately led to to being able to adopt the children that we were fostering. And one thing that is funny for me is when you talk about obedience, when I was sitting down at my table and I was, with my wife, Wendy, and there was a social worker there, and they gave me the application and I started to fill it out. And there was a box there that it asks you to check the box to be a adoptive resource. So I didn't know what that meant exactly. And when I said, well, what does this box mean, being an adoptive resource? And she said, well, that means that if the opportunity arises for the child to be adopted, that you would be interested in being that adoptive parent. And I said, at the time, I said, oh, no, I'm not interested in that. I'm simply interested in being a foster parent. That's what I want to do. Adoption seems a little bit too big of a step for me. And so my wife looked at me and she said, let me ask you a question. If you got to that place and they asked you, would you adopt, and you felt that God was telling you to do it, would you do it? And I said, well, yes, I would do it if I felt that God was doing it. Then she said, well, you need to check that box then. And I said, okay, fine, I'll do it. And I checked the box. So to me, that's what obedience looks like. It's about listening to the promptings of the Holy Spirit, maybe listening to your wife, and just checking the box and taking the first step.
Love it. Love it. So where can churches go to start participating in foster care? Like if a pastor's listening to this podcast right now, they're like, all right, I'm in that 30%. I've been mulling it. I want to get this more involved in my church. How can they start going? What's a great first step for them?
There are a couple organizations that I would point them to that are integrators. Their job is to contact a church leader or a pastor and begin doing, the training, the steps, the resources. It starts with an assessment because every church is different. Mm-hmm. They're in different locations. They have different opportunities. In America, 50% of all the foster children are in 5% of the counties.
Wow.
So there's a high concentration. And the church might be right there. They may not be right there. So there's an assessment that is done, and then the next steps in terms of do they want to provide resources to foster families to help them, kind of wrap around them, provide support and care. Simple things like cards. Diapers. Diapers is a big one. That's not usually provided for any other way. And so it can just be very simple things like that. So these organizations help with that. One of those organizations is called Backyard Orphans. They provide that kind of training. And there's another organization that is called Compact Family Services. And they do that as well. They connect you with the people that can just help a pastor move it along. But what we found is the pastors are very busy. Mm-hmm. And so, adding another ministry, another program really is difficult. But what the surveys showed is 48%, this was a national survey about 5 years ago, 48% of the pastors in America said that they would put foster care ministry in the top 3 elements of the vision of their church if they only knew how. Mm. So that is the question. It's just simply, how do we do it? That's what I addressed in my book. My book shows a way to do foster care ministry. It was a way that we did that at our church locally. We used some programs, plugged them in, and it was successful. And we were able to see at our church that with doing it one step at a time over a 5-year period, we saw 30% of all the foster families in our county eventually attending our church.
Wow.
So they want to be in community. They want to connect with other people and be encouraged, be supported. It's just a great opportunity for pastors. And so those would be a couple places I would point them to.
Yeah. Now, having served in the higher education industry and holding degrees in ministry and leadership and business, you have a lot of expertise. So how did your education and experiences prepare you for your work with foster care?
Well, they were the catalyst. They were also, like the directional element that got me moving forward. So I felt prompting and a leading from the Holy Spirit to go into a doctoral program at Southeastern University in ministry. And it just starts with a prompting, and many of us recognize that as leaders. It's the voice of the Holy Spirit just moving us forward. And sometimes we know that, but we don't know what all of the future will look like. And God rarely shows us, miles and miles down the road, but He does show us the next steps to take. And so I knew that was the next step to take, and just began moving forward with that doctoral program. The essence of that program allowed me to pick a direction or a cause or a focus for my studies. And that is when I sat down with a mentor at Southeastern who really just listened to my life, listened to my heart, and gave me some guidance. And he's the one that kind of pulled out this area of foster care ministry and just made it an area of focus for me. And he said, I really think that God's doing something in your life, and that this is a voice that needs to be in the marketplace. It needs to be told. It needs to be written about. And it's clear that you're already living it. Mm-hmm. And there's some study to do about it that you can add, some research that you can do to be able to tell the story in a greater way. So that's where it began. Yeah. And a 3-year doctoral program, really the culmination of it was learning that foster care is at the heart of the gospel. My mentor at Southeastern stated that at the very beginning. He said, I believe that foster care is at the heart of the gospel. And I looked at him, and I was not that sure at that point. I said, really? It's at the heart of the gospel? And he said, well, that's what you're going to learn in the 3-year program. You're going to come to that conclusion, but you're going to do it, on your own through your studies. And one of the areas that really just made that come alive for me was Isaiah chapter 1. When I dug into that chapter and just saw the people of God doing the ritual of church, trying to please God through worship and, banging of cymbals and, incense and all the things that they were doing to try and please God. But the heart of God was expressed in that in verse 16, where, 15 verses, God says, it grieves me that you come to me and try to gain my, favor. And you're doing this without caring for the vulnerable that are right in your backyard. And God just said, that's not acceptable. People that represent me are people that need to care for the orphans, care for the widows, care for the vulnerable children. And if you don't do that, God said, I'm going to bring disaster. So He didn't give people time to get their master's degree or to buy a bigger house or to, make more money to be able to care for children. He didn't give them any time. He said, this is your calling. You need to do it now. You got to fix this. And if you don't, disaster will come to you. And that contrast, up to that point, I had never seen it that way before. Wow. So it was very compelling. And I told the Lord, I said, well, if nothing else comes from this study, you have changed the heart of my heart as a father for all of these children that we were fostering and then eventually adopted.
I love that. It's such a powerful idea, right? That this is an immediate thing, right? That this isn't something that you need to wait for till the time is right. Like, this is something you need to do right now. What else did you learn in your studies? What are some other things that people don't understand about the foster care system? Maybe even some of the things that if you could, you would change, you would reform. What do we need to be thinking about this system as a church in America?
That's so good. There's a couple key ones. Number one is there's the recruitment of foster families, and whenever you ask what is the number one need, social services will always tell you recruitment. But right behind that is retention. And they have money and they have programs to recruit foster parents, but they don't have any programs to support emotionally foster families that begin doing this. If you're a foster parent for the first time, you go from having no voices in your life in this area to about 6. You have a guardian ad litem, you have a social worker, you have a doctor, you have a school teacher, you have a biological parent. I mean, you have all these voices in your life. And so just having someone that can cheer you on is really very, very powerful. I talked to one of the judges that is involved with the placement of children in the county, and that was my question to him. What's the most important thing? What do we need to know? And he said, well, other than recruiting, the number one thing that anyone can do to help in foster care is to support foster parents. So the national dropout rate is between 40 and 60% nationally.
Wow.
And we saw that to be the case in our county as well. And so what I did with my research in the doctoral program was dive into, what can change that, move the needle, and help keep foster parents in the game longer.
Yeah.
And so by supporting them in very simple ways with an encouragement, just an email, a card, some baby formula, some diapers, doing a parent night out where they can go out and do some shopping, and you set up some kind of childcare event for the kids. Just very simple things that an individual or a church can do to help. What it does is it lets them know that the community wants them to succeed, that someone wants them to do it, because foster parents often jump into it with a burden that they have themselves to make a difference, but they really feel like it's something that they chose to do, and they don't want to put their burden on someone else. So they don't go out and ask for help. They don't come to you and say, I'm drowning here, I'm having a hard time, can you help me? They just don't do that. So people have to be proactive and reach out and say, hey, I see that you're a foster parent, and that is so important, and I just want to encourage you. So what we found is we did a study for 12 months where we just did these kinds of things, these support activities. And in that time frame, we saw that the overall satisfaction, in every way that foster parents were feeling, went up by 25%. So it wasn't 2%, it wasn't 5%. I mean, 25% is a significant move on the needle.
Yeah.
That is felt. That's something that is felt. The next one is that we found that the dropout rate was radically changed. So we had 14% of the people that were foster families in our church that we surveyed. They told us in 1 year we will quit. 100% certainty. They said we are going to finish out this year and we're going to be done. And when we wrapped around them with just some very simple things, we came back to them a year later and we said, okay, same group of people. Yeah. Now, how many of you are 100% sure you're going to drop out? And that number went down to 0.
Wow.
I mean, no one said that they were going to drop out. So being able to help with retention and recruitment, those are the number one and number two needs in our country today.
That's great. Well, we're going to move into our fire round and ask 3 quick questions here for quick right off the top of your head, so we can get some great practical wisdom for all of our listeners. But I just want to encourage our listeners to pick up the book, Fostering Jesus. I mean, you formulate a plan. You talk about the experience. You share your stories. You talk about, again, how the church can empower and just make huge impact in what is a critical need in our nation. So make sure you do pick up that book. But let's move into our fire round. Three quick questions, and I'm going to ask Michael to fire away.
Okay, so what's the first piece of advice you give to people who they've crossed the threshold, right? They're taking the step from being the 30% thinking about it to I'm doing it. We're signing the dotted line. What's the first piece of advice you give to those individuals?
To get support, to find some other foster families that they can do life with, that they can share the experience with, and just gain support. Find other people to do foster care with.
That's great. Second quick question. What are some practical ways for people to still support foster community if they're not actively fostering children?
Sure. Well, there's an organization called Care Portal. They are all over the country, and there are groups that facilitate that. And basically, it's just a software that allows people to be able to connect with social services and provide very tangible needs. So that's one way. Churches can plug into that Care Portal network, and then individuals, they can connect with agencies in their area or social services and simply say, what is it that you need? What can I do? And you can bring basic needs like a car seat. Sometimes a new placement needs a crib in order to qualify, and they don't have one. So you could buy them a crib or a mattress. Being able to buy, like I said, formula, doing notes of encouragement to people. Very, very easy, practical things to encourage foster parents. And then business owners, this is an amazing opportunity because, say you own or even are a manager at an oil change facility. Well, you can offer coupons to foster families and just bless them that way. If you cut hair for a living, you could offer discounts to foster families. And it doesn't have to be a lot. I mean, it can just be some kind of a discount. Ultimately, what you're doing is you're showing them that you care about what they're doing, and they feel the love by receiving whatever you give them. It could be a basket with, some gifts. I had, there was a man in our church that just made a little gift basket. He brought it over to a foster family's home, rang the doorbell, and the children came out, and one of the children just gave him a big hug, and he melted. I mean, he said, I was just hooked from that moment forward. He said, I wanted to keep bringing those baskets every week. And so it's very, very easy to help and make a difference and just show the love of God by helping a foster family.
Love it. Love it. Last question. Tell us a little bit about your foundation, One Hope. What's the mission behind there? How can we get behind it? Where can we go? Tell us a little bit more about it.
Sure. Well, it's called One Hope Together, and you can just find it online. It is an organization that is, designed to rally churches together around foster care. So it addresses everything that we've talked about today, and it equips churches to be able to do that. So there's trainings that are involved. There's encouragement for pastors. There's a team that has been developed, that can provide education. So that's an organization that started in 2018 and has grown every year and supports more and more foster families each and every year. It's also an organization that the counties got behind. There's a partnership that has been formed because they see the fruit, they see the impact, and it is helping them improve their goals. And so as it's a partnership between the churches and the state agencies to be able to accomplish the same common goal of helping children.
Well, Bob, I want to thank you for joining us today on Framework Leadership. We are grateful for your time and insight, and just what a powerful ministry, a needed ministry in our communities, and grateful that you are leading the way in that. If you want to stay up to date with Dr. Bob Griffith, you can follow him on Instagram at Dr. Bob Griff. You can also grab a copy of Fostering Jesus on Amazon or at Barnes & Noble or wherever you get your books. I'm sure it's all available there for you, and we encourage you to tap into that. Thanks for joining us today on Framework Leadership. Take care, everyone.
Thank you so much for joining us today on Framework Leadership. If you're watching on YouTube right now would be a great time to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button so you can get more leadership content right into your YouTube feed. You can also check us out on Instagram at Kent_Ingle, at Dr. Michael Steiner, or on Twitter and YouTube at Kent Ingle. And hey, if you love great email newsletters, and I know that I do, you want to check out the Framework Leadership newsletter. Every single Friday drops in great tips to be a better leader, resources, thoughts right into your inbox. Check it out. You can sign up at kentingle.com. Make sure you hop onto there. Thank you so much for listening to Framework Leadership.
Take care, everybody.